fix up a couple of things here. Great. So let's get started. So, welcome to today's session, which is all about using Google Forms for music teachers. And who would have guessed this would be such a popular topic? It's kind of mind blowing. If you were on a little bit earlier, I mentioned that we've had more than 2,400 registrations for this webinar. Actually, was it higher than that? Anyway, there was a lot of them. So clearly it's a popular topic, and it's a great thing to look at and to cover and just have an understanding of how to use, because I think there are so many things you can do with forms and that it's quite underrated. So I wanted to start off this session. I'll just introduce myself for those who don't know me. I know lots of you on today have been to many of my webinars before, so welcome back. But if this is your first time, my name's Katie, and I run a business based in Melbourne, Australia, called Midnight Music. I do lots of training for music teachers in how to use technology in music education, and I have a blog and a podcast, and I speak at conferences quite a lot when they're actually running, but nothing much this year, not very much at all. So I'm looking forward to get back into that once it happens again. I have two boys, two lovely boys, and a lovely dog as well. And the dog may well make an appearance during the webinar at some point, as she does. As soon as I start talking, she thinks it's her time to get attention. So, before we get into Google Forms, a little bit of housekeeping. If you have tech issues, I will say it's usually at your own end. So just log out of the session and come back in again, refresh the browser. I always say kick your kids off the PlayStation and whatever else they're on, Netflix and so on. See if you can improve your internet connection. That is usually the issue. There will be a copy of the slides provided for those of you watching if you would like to have them. Today's session's a little bit different because I am actually going to jump live into Forms itself. So not everything I'm showing is going to be in the slides, because I'm going to be showing Forms live in the web browser. But it will give you a sense of, quite a bit of the session and help you to remember some of the things. Now, the moderator of the chat today, as has been for the last few webinars, is Amy Burns, who's fantastic and will be typing as fast as she possibly can to keep up with any questions. And there will be a longer Q&A session at the end where I will stop sharing my screen and we'll just chat. So feel free to either save your question up till then, or if it gets missed because the chat's flowing so quickly, please don't worry about asking it a second or a third time if you need to. That's totally fine. And I will encourage you, if you have used Forms before and you feel like you can answer someone's question, feel free. I do want to say one thing though, and this is very specific to Google Forms. Forms works a little bit differently. Well, some of the things are a tiny bit different if you are using it within a Google Classroom ecosystem at your school, as to whether you're using it as a non-Google Classroom person. So maybe if you think that it works some kind of way in your situation, it may not quite work like that for the other person that you're helping out. I'm just going to say that, and I will actually talk about those slight differences a little bit later on. But for the most part, the mechanics of the forms themselves are the same no matter what type of user you are. Okay, so let's get started into Forms. I've got lots to cover today, and I did not really think there was going to be so much that I wanted to include. And as I went on, I found there was more and more and more, as usual. And I've got a lot of it in here today. So we'll see how long this is going to take to get through, but I will jump live into the forms and show you things and how to build things from scratch if you've never used forms before. And then we'll talk about some of the more advanced things you can do too. So today's session, the basic things we're going to cover, I want to talk about the 6 steps to creating a successful form. I'm going to show you some examples of forms, like ideas for using them in music, and also very specifically the question types that you can include in your forms. And in this area, I do want to cover things like using notation images, using audio, and using video in your forms. There are kind of specific things that work and that don't work, and we'll talk through the ways that you can use it. I'm going to talk about some general tips and techniques as well, and we'll touch on how to prevent cheating on quizzes that you've set up in forms as well. So, just a general starting point, how can you use forms in music education? There are lots of ways, and I won't read all of these out, but you can see these were some of the things I came up with very quickly. There are many, many more ways of using them. And I've got quizzes as a single dot point there, and that really could be many different types of quizzes, really. But you can use them for very simple, quick activities, a quick check in, a quick exit ticket, a quick voting for something, but you can use them for more complex things like setting up an escape room activity or creating camp registration forms and ensemble sign-ups and so on. And your forms can be very short with just a few questions, or they could be quite extensive with many questions and many different sections and so on. So we'll talk about some of those and I'll show you some of those examples as we go through. A couple of notes. So, using Google Forms, you don't need to be at a Google school. You don't need to be at a school has Google Classroom set up and so on to use Google Forms. What you end up with once you've set up a form is a simple link that you can use to share, and you can share that in any way, in any place. So you can share it in Canvas or Schoology if you're using those systems. You can share it in an email or a message to parents. There are many different ways that you can send out a link to a form. So you don't have to be a Google school to use them. Having said that, I know that some schools that are not using the Google ecosystem are prescriptive about you not using Google tools because they want you to use, i.e., Microsoft, because you're a Microsoft school. So that may be where you run into a barrier. But generally speaking, if you're allowed to use forms, you can use forms. And I will also say that if you're not at a Google school, if you can't use forms at your school and you kind of want to, but you're being prevented from doing that by your admin or someone else, the ideas and the techniques that I'm going to show today are probably going to work in other form or quiz building platforms. So if you are in that situation, you can still hang around and watch and maybe take some of the concepts and ideas away to use. I will just say before I go into this, I did have a little thought about maybe I was toying with the idea of maybe showing how things work in Microsoft Forms alongside Google Forms, but then that would have turned into a 5-hour webinar. So I ditched that idea. So I'm sorry if you're in that situation and you have to use Microsoft Forms, but do take the ideas and concepts. Now, I really want to emphasize this point before we get really stuck in, and this is particularly with regard to quizzes. So, for those of you who are really wanting to set up quizzes for your students that are self grading, which is a fantastic thing that you can do in forms, I really want you to first of all consider whether forms is actually the best tool for the job that you want to achieve. And with regard to quizzes, they can be time consuming to create, particularly if you're putting in a lot of images or you want to include audio or video and so on. And then if you want to get audio and video and images back from your students in some sort of format, the Google Forms platform may not be the best job for that thing. So, I'll just give one example. If you are wanting to send out video and receive back lots of videos from students, you can do that in a Google form, but Flipgrid may just be a better option for you. And similarly, when we get to quizzes and we talk about setting up notation based quizzes where students are looking at musical element images and identifying notes or intervals or rhythms and so on in a form, they take a lot of time to set up, and you may be better off using another tool. And I'll talk about some of those options. So, do just keep that in mind. Forms is not the only solution for that type of quiz. And you need to weigh up whether it's going to be the best one for the job that you are wanting to achieve. Okay, so let's get on to actually creating a form. So I'm going to run through, just show you the 6 steps that I've identified to create a successful form. And then I'm going to jump into forms in the web browser and actually show you how you can make a simple form. So my 6 steps are when you've set up your form, the thing that I would suggest, strongly suggest, and what I would say is my golden rule, is to start your form off with identifying information, i.e., you're going to ask the person filling out the form for something like their first name, their last name, their email address, their class, whatever it is. Now, you don't need to include all of those things in every form, and it really depends on what you're using the form for, but use that as a starting point. There are some exceptions to this rule, but generally speaking, start with the identifying information. You will kick yourself if you set up the form and send it out and you have forgotten to put that in, full stop, because you'll get all the answers back, all these responses back from your form, and you won't know who submitted which response. So start off with that as the general rule, and then you can't go too wrong. After that, you're going to add your questions, and there are many different types of questions that you can add to forms, and I'm going to run through the different types in a moment. Third step for me is to make it pretty. And to be honest, you can reverse the order of some of these steps, but this is the next thing I do because if you've used Google Forms before, you'll know that when you start a form, every single time it's purple. And boy, you get really sick of purple forms after a while. So get in there and change the color, change the header, do something to it to make it look a bit nicer. Now, step 4, I've got bits and pieces. Oops, I've just clicked off there. Sorry, hold on. Let me go back. Step 4, bits and pieces. I could not think of a better title for this step. So this is where you're going to adjust some settings and things like that. Again, I'll show you that in a moment. Step 5, the most important step, test the form the whole way through. Fill the entire thing out yourself as if you are a student or a parent or a recipient of some kind, and go all the way through to the point where you click on that submit button. Do not skip this step. I can't tell you how many times I've seen either other people send forms out or I've sent them out, maybe where I've gone, nah, I'm pretty sure it's all good. And then it's just not right. There'll be some weird thing along the way. So do test the whole thing through yourself. And then the last thing is that once you've set up your form and you've tested it, you're going to share it out some way and monitor the responses. All right. So let's make a form. I'm going to head over to my browser and we'll just look at this here. Now, when you're getting started, when you actually want to click a button which creates a new form, I've identified at least 4 different places where you can do that from. Now, I'm in my forms kind of like home screen here. The address at the top here, if you can't read it, is docs.google.com/forms. And that gives me quick access to all of the forms that I've created recently. Super useful for this session where I want to show a whole different type of, a whole heap of different forms. But you don't have to start from this point. If you're in your Google Drive, you can go into Google Drive and click on the new button and find Google Forms. You may have to click on more to get there, but Google Forms and start it from there. There are also options to start your forms from within Google Classroom. You can actually start an assignment and click the button which is Forms or Quiz Assignment. And the last one is to go to forms.new. If you just type that into your web browser, you'll get to a place where you are given a new form from scratch. So I'm going to do it from here. I'm going to click on the blank form option and I'm going to get started. And there's the purple. Look at the purple. We'll change that in a moment. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is give my form a title of some sort. And I'm going to just do a quick exit ticket example here. So students are leaving the class and you want to get some feedback on what they've done in the class itself. Golden rule, start with the identifying information. So I'm going to start with first name in this field here. Now, this is my first little question place. And as soon as I start typing in the question itself into this field, Google makes an educated guess at what type of question it is, and it changes the option over here to suit the type of question that I've asked. It's a little bit eerie and kind of clever at the same time. When this first started happening in forms, it hasn't been happening all the time, but from the beginning, but it sort of has been the last, I don't know, more than 12 months or so. I found it a little bit scary because I don't know, it's like it's thinking for you. So it's saying first name, it thinks I want a short answer type spot here for the students to write in, and it's correct. I do want that. So that's all good. If I wanted to change what it's presuming that I want, I can click on the drop down menu here and choose a different type of answer. But I'm going to leave it at that and I will go through these other ones in time. But for now, we're going to go with short answer. Now, the other thing with every single question that you set up in a form, there's an option to make it required or leave it as not required. So I'm going to turn on required because I don't want anyone to skip this question. I want to force them to answer this. And if you've ever filled out a form before, you'll know that if the question is required, it has a little red asterisks on next to it when you're actually filling out the form, and you cannot proceed. You can't submit the form unless you've actually filled something in that place. So that's my first one done. I'm going to go next and add another question, and I'm using this little plus sign here. And again, I'm going to type my question in here. So I'm going to do last name for this one. You might want to call it family name if that suits your group of students better. Some people prefer that as the terminology. So last name there. Again, Google's guessing that I want a short answer. And yes, and I do want it required again. Now, I'm going to give you a recommendation that if you're asking for first and last name, that you split them into first name and last name rather than just having write your full name here. Now, the reason for this is that you're thinking of your future self, and it's going to give you many more options for sorting out your information later down the track. I find this a much better way to organize things. You don't have to do this, but I do find it a much better option. The next thing I'm going to do is add another question. And for this one, I'm going to ask for email. So again, you can ask for email here. I'm going to talk about this little button here. It says enable email collection setting. I'm not going to turn that on for now, but I will explain why you may or may not choose to turn that on. Now, if you are in Google Classroom and you're a Google school, the form will actually automatically collect emails for you. So you don't really need to include an email field. The form will actually collect them for you automatically. But if you're not in that situation, do include it here. All right, I'm going to go new question again. Oh, let's make this required. New question again. And this one I'm going to actually ask for class. So what class are my students in? And again, this really helps you down the track sorting out your data if you include a question which is about what class are you in. Now, I could actually have the students fill out a short answer box, and they could type in the name of their class or their teacher's name in the box. But I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to give them the answers in a drop down menu or a multiple choice menu, because it means that I know all of those answers are going to be typed in the same way. And again, it's going to be much easier to sort the information later on. So if I go in here and I choose drop down, this is going to give me the opportunity to fill in lots of options which are going to all squeeze nicely into a drop down menu. So for instance, if I'm working with students who are in grade 8 and there's 8A, 8B, 8C, 8D, 8E, 8F, I want them to choose this from the drop down menu, because everybody that chooses 8B is going to be written in exactly the same way. There's no question about which class it is, and it will allow me to sort the information later much more easily. I could do multiple choice for this one. If you don't have too many options, i.e., 3 or 4, multiple choice will be fine and they will all show in the form. However, if you've got a lot of different classes that you want the students to choose from, a drop down is good because it will bunch them up neatly and it won't take up so much space in the form. So let me show you that one as an example. So drop down. Now I've got the opportunity to write down what options I want in this menu. So let's use my example. I've got classes which are 8A, 8B, 8C, 8D, and 8E. That will do. And again, I'm going to make this required. Now, for me, when I'm in the editing view of the form, it doesn't look like it's going to look for the person filling out the form later down the track. At any time when you're setting up your form, you can use this little eye preview button up the top here to see what the form will look like for the person receiving it. So let's click that now. You can do this at any time during your setup process. I'm going to do that. And here we go. We can see first name, last name, email, and then class. And I can just choose from the drop down menu. So that's looking good. I'm liking this. I'm going to close that window. I don't need that one for now. I'll go back over to my original form here. All right, let's keep going. I'm only going to add a couple more questions to this. So the next one is going to be, because this is an exit type ticket thing, I'm going to do, what did you learn today? mark. And again, Google has a little think about what type of question it thinks I'm asking for. And it thinks, you know what, it's probably going to be a longer answer. And so it's made it a long answer text question. I'm happy with this. I'm going to leave it at that. That's cool. Again, I'm going to make this required. I'm going to show you a trick later on to save you time if you want all of your questions required, which I usually do. But for now, we'll do it manually. So that's that one. And then next one, I'm going to do on a scale of 1 to 5. How did you feel about this lesson? Now, I've deliberately included this one, and Google again has guessed that I am asking for a linear scale. This is going to show you one of those scales literally from 1 to 5, where the students will click on a little circle to say 1, I didn't like the lesson at all, or I felt horrible, and 5 would be awesome. So it's a really good idea to actually put labels to identify what you're calling 1 and 5. Like, is 1 the highest, or is 5 the highest in your scale? So I'm going to label number 1 as I felt horrible about this lesson, and number 5 is I felt great. And again, I'm going to make it required, and I'm going to add another one plus. Now you can see this one actually now I've navigated away from that. This is how it's going to look for the person. So that's cool. They can click one of those. And then this question here, the last one is going to be a question I have about this lesson is, and again, this is going to be a long answer text. And again, I didn't change it. Google guessed what I wanted. But again, if I needed to make it something different, I could come into this drop down menu and change it there. And again, I'm going to make this required. Okay, now the next step, we're going to make this a bit pretty and get out of purple. So up the top right here, there's a customize theme button, and I'm going to click on that. And you can see here, I can change the color. So if you don't want purple, you can have blue or red, or this, I like this one, teal-y sort of color. No, not teal, green, blue, whatever. There's all of those options there. And then as you change the color in here, the background color options also change. Now, in addition to that, you can come in here if you want something a little bit different, choose an image. So I'm clicking on the choose image button under the header. And there are a number of inbuilt images in Google which allow you to choose what header image you'd like. You can go through all of these options. I'll just pick something from the illustrations. I quite like these ones here. And once you've picked one of these, this is a space theme one. Once you've picked one of these, you'll notice that the color options change on the right-hand side, which to actually match with the header image that you've selected. So now I've got this selection here of colors from the actual image itself, and I can choose one of these instead to go with the image. I can adjust the background color, and you can fiddle with that as much as you like. So that's it for that part of the form. Now, the last little bit is that I'm going to do step 4 in my process, which is the bits and pieces. And I'm going to do a few things before I test my form. So, what I like to do is to go up to the left hand side, first of all, and click where it says Untitled Form. Now, the title that's here is the title that your recipient is going to see for your form. The title that's up in the top left-hand corner is the one that's going to appear in your Google Drive when you're looking for your form later down the track. So if I click on this, Google will actually fill in for me whatever I have filled out for the title of my form. So that's good. It's really good to make sure that you do that. Otherwise, you will end up with 17 forms in your Google Drive called Untitled Form. The other thing that you can do up here is to add something more specific if you want to find it more easily down the track. So it's really up to you what you put there. The next thing I'm going to do, come along to the right here and click on the move to folder option. Now, I suggest doing this. Now, if you have actually started off your form in the first place from your Google Classroom and you've started from an assignment and click the button in there, it will automatically put the form into your classroom folder for whichever classroom you're in at that time. So you don't necessarily need to do this, but if you have not created it this way, it can be a good idea to make sure that you place it somewhere that you can find it in the future. I won't do that now, but you'll know that that's what you can do and that's where to find it there. Other bits and pieces that we're going to look at to change or adjust here, I'm going to go over now to the right-hand side and click on the settings cog button here and just show you a few things in here. Now, this first page is quite important. You can turn on the collect email addresses option, and Google Forms will automatically add an email field for you in your form. The difference between doing it here and doing it in the form itself is that if you use this option, the email field will be first in the form and you have no control over that. It's not the end of the world. It's just that sometimes I don't want it to be the first thing in the form. So you can choose whether you have that selected here or whether you do it manually in the form itself. Now, important under here is whether you want to restrict this form to the users of your organization or not. So for me, I don't want to restrict it. If I need to send this out to a whole bunch of teachers, which are not part of my company or my business, I need to uncheck this box. I forgot to check this with Amy, but I'm presuming that if you are a Google school, it will say your school name here, and you would need to uncheck that if you needed to send it to people outside of your school domain. Again, there's an option here to limit the form to one response only. Now, for my exit ticket, if I wanted to use this same form for lots of lessons over and over and over, I don't want to have that checked. But if this is a quiz and or some other form where I only want people to fill it out once, I am definitely going to check that. So again, that's just an option that you'll choose depending on what type of form it is. And these two things at the bottom here, edit after submit, this can be really useful. I'll tell you an example where I have allowed this to happen. This allows the person who's submitted their form, they've done the whole thing. This will allow them to see a little link at the very end after they've submitted, and the link says, do you want to go back in and edit your answers? Now, this can be really useful in some situations. If it's a test or a quiz, no, you don't want them to edit after submit, so you would leave it off. But for instance, I had a couple of job positions recently advertised, and when people are filling out a form which allows them to tell me information about themselves and answer lengthy questions about certain aspects of a job, I did want to allow them to go in and edit their answers if they chose to. So you can turn that on for certain types of situations. And you can also allow people to see the summary of the responses that everyone else has submitted as well. And again, I don't usually have that on, but there might be certain instances where you want that. Going along in the next settings here, presentation. Here's where it says the link to submit another response, so you can turn it on and off there. Shuffle question order can be really useful. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on. Turning on show the progress bar. If you've got a very lengthy form, you can actually turn on a progress bar which shows the people that you are halfway through the form filling out process or 3/4 of the way through. That's a nice thing to do if the form is quite lengthy and you want to allow them to see how far through. Now, the thing that I always change is this very dry message which says your response has been recorded. That's what the person sees after they've submitted their form. So I always change this to something like, thank you, you'll hear from us soon, or uh, congratulations or well done on completing the quiz, or whatever it is that you want to do for your particular situation. So something that's nice there. I also do give information if I know that I need to tell people once they've submitted the form, the next step is that they should check their email for a whatever. I will actually put that in the confirmation message. So thanks for filling out the form. Please go check your email and you will find our response to XYZ. So you can use that for that space there. Now, quizzes, again, we'll talk about this more a little bit later on, but if this was test, a form where you are actually setting it as a quiz and you have questions that students are going to answer, multiple choice and so on, you can turn this on and auto grading will be in place for the quiz. So we'll talk about, this one is not a quiz. I won't turn it on for this form, but we'll talk about that in more detail later on. So I'm going to save those settings there, and I jump into these settings every time I do a form. I just quickly go through those 3 tabs, check, 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 done. Now, other bits and pieces, I think that's it. I think we're done with all of those. Step 5, the absolute most important step is to test the form. So let's see how we've done here. I'm going to click the preview button again. and just pop something in here. First name, last name, email address. It doesn't matter what you type as long as you type an at sign. Oh, I've spelt my name all wrong, but let's just do that. .com, something like that. As long as the format is vaguely correct. I'm going to choose my class here. What did I learn today? All the things. How did I feel about the lesson? Great. And a question I have about this. Oh, less is lesson. You were all noting that spelling error there, weren't you? Frustrating when you can't tell someone that there's a spelling error in their form. So there you go. This is testing the form has showed me that I have a spelling error there and I need to fix it. No questions. So there you go. I'm going to click on submit. And I should see my little thank you message there. And here's my link if I want to actually submit another response. So that's done. My testing is all good. So once you've done that with your form, now at this point, you're going to then share the form with your students and you can then monitor the responses that come in. Now, can you see already? I've got one response to this form. And if I click over to my responses tab, I can see Fred Flintstone has filled out my form. I can see which class he's in, and there's some other results there. I'm going to show you another form. Here's one I've prepared earlier where I can see more responses because I filled it in a few times with some dummy names. And I'll show you some things that you can do with the responses. But before we do that, let's just talk about how you're going to send this form out to people. Now, obviously, if you're in Google Classroom and you have set it as an assignment, you don't need to do much else because you're setting it as an assignment and students will receive it as an assignment within Classroom. However, if you are needing to send it out to people and you're not in Google Classroom using it as an assignment, you'll click on the Send button at the top right and choose one of the many options in here. So you can fill in, it's like writing an email right within the form here. You can fill in the address of someone, there's a subject of exit ticket, and it says, I've invited you to fill out a form, and you can change that text if you want to. I don't think I've ever used this option, but it's there if you need to. The thing that I mostly use is this second option here. I'm clicking on the little link icon, and you can see there is a link to the form which I can send to anyone in any way that I like. Now, the link always is incredibly long and very difficult. So, the first thing you should do is click on shorten URL and you'll get a nicer, shorter URL there. It's not still that short. It's very hard to read out to someone, for instance, but it's okay for sending. So that's the option that I probably most frequently use. But the third option here, which I just want to point out, is this one. And if you click here, you'll see that you can grab some embed code for the form that you've created. Now, if you're using Google Sites or some other website platform, or even I think Schoology and Canvas may both allow you to embed things into your LMS. You can copy this code and paste it into the back end of your website. And what this means is that the form will appear on the page. And it means that people won't need to click through to a separate tab to fill out your form. It will live straight on the web page where you've embedded this code. I'm not going to go into detail with that today, but there are many YouTube videos showing you how you can do that if you need a little lesson on how to embed code in your website. It's very easy. It's really just a copy and paste job, and then the form looks beautiful on the page and people can fill it out right there. Great option if you're using Google Sites, particularly if you're communicating with parents and you want them to fill their form out. It can look really good on the web page there. So that's it. I would copy my link most of the time and then send it out to someone. So that's the sharing options. Let's just get back to responses for a minute. So I'm going to close this one and open up. Here's one I've prepared earlier. Now, same exit ticket form here. I've got 6 responses on this one. Now, I can click on the responses tab and I can see a summary of all the answers that have been submitted. So I've got Fred, Barney, Hermione, Ron, and Harry in my class. Their last names are here. I can see how many from each class have filled out the form. I can see all of their answers in one place to this one question. I can see how they all feel about the lesson, and I can see the questions, the question that they have about the lesson. And if I scroll up, You can also view the answers to the forms that you've received by question only. So if I just wanted to see the answer to on a scale of 1 to 5, how did you feel? I can click on that option and I can see all of the answers there. I can go also into individual. So up here, the individual tab, and just view the responses by one person at a time. Now, these options are good, but to be honest, I rarely read my responses to forms in this format here. The thing that I mostly do is to use this little spreadsheet option up the top here. And this spreadsheet option will allow me to transfer in one click all of the information that I've received in a form into a spreadsheet format, and it's so much easier to read and sort and to do things with in that format. So let's just do that now. I'll click create spreadsheet, and it's asking me, do I want to create a new spreadsheet or add this information to an existing spreadsheet? I'm going to create a new one. Click create, and it's going to set it up for me here. Hope everyone's going well. I'm just glancing over to the chat window. All right, so here's all of the information in one place, and it's much easier to read things here. Now, the reason I really like using forms is that I can so easily sort the information. So if I wanted to see in a group together the responses just from 8B sorted in one place together, I can go into my spreadsheet data column here, data column, what do you call it? Menu, and go, actually, let me click on this column first. So I want to sort by this one. I'm going to go to data and I want to sort the sheet by A to Z. Now, that's going to group all of 8A together, 8B together, 8C together, no 8Ds, but I've got 8E there. If I have the scale question here, I could group the things in the spreadsheet by the scale as well, and it's going to change the order of what I see. So there are lots of options for the spreadsheet. The thing I also love about having it in a spreadsheet format is I can add other columns with information for my own personal use, which go along with the information I've received in a form. So that can be also useful. If I wanted to add teacher comments, for instance, I could do that in a column here. Adding it here does not affect the original form at all. It just allows me as a teacher to add other things to the form itself, to the spreadsheet itself, I should say. All right, let's go out of this. I want to show you some other types of questions that you can create, including using things like images, audio, video, and so on. So you've learned the basics of setting up a form, and now it's just about choosing different types of questions to suit your needs and to set them up in the right way. So let's talk about notation images. I know that lots of people wanted to know about this and how you can create your own quizzes using things like images as part of the question or even as the answer options in your form. So what I did, I started off again, first name, last name, that's as usual. And then I've created a multiple choice question here, and it says, which of the following is a treble clef? And the students are going to click on the correct option. Now, it looks a little bit weird in this view, in the editing view. Let me just open up the preview version of this form and I'll show you what it looks like for the student. So they will see it like this. It looks a lot more nice and even and neat. So that's what they're going to see, which is the following is the treble clef, and they will click on the option, whichever one they think is the correct option here, and then they'll submit it. So creating this question, I'm going to just click on the question here. I'm in the edit view of the form again. And if I click on the question, I get back into the view, the place where I can add more things to the question or change it if I need to. So this is a multiple choice question. And when you set up a multiple choice question, it gives you a place for option one. And instead of typing in something for the students to choose from, I added an image itself. So let me show you how I do that. I'm going to just click new question here. And this is a new question, a fresh one down here. So what I'll do is type the same thing, which of these is a treble clef? And then instead of typing in a written answer here, I'm going to come across to the right-hand side and there's a little image picture. I can click on that, and instead of having a written answer, I'm going to actually choose to have an image answer for the students to choose from. Now, I'm inserting an image. I have options to upload something, use something from my camera, from a URL, photos. Oh, I'm going to go into Google Drive, and I'm going to go into this first folder here, which is a collection of notation images, which I actually created and I have available for free download on my website. So if you're looking for images to use in forms like these, there is a link to this collection in the Wakelet collection that I've set up for this webinar. Amy will post a link to that if you need that again, I'm sure. So let me open up this folder, and I've got groups of different things here. I'm going to head into clefs, and I'm going to choose, so I want to have at least one treble clef because that's going to be the correct thing, but let's put a bass clef in first as one of the incorrect answer options. So I'll select that and hit insert, and it takes a second to load, but now option 1 is done. I'm going to click on here just below to add another option. So bass clef is there. I'm going to go back to image on the right hand side here, and I'm going to go back to my Google Drive. Don't you wish it would save where you were the previous time, like 3 seconds ago? No, you have to click through every time. Back into clefs, and this time I will add the treble clef. So that's there. Click insert, and then I'll just do one more, add option, go back to image and find another clef to add. If you don't have stave lines, alto and tenor clefs look the same. So I'll add one of those. Alto clef, that'll do. And that's done. So now, of course, similar to this one above, when the students view it, they're going to see that in this way here. So that's easy to do, but can you see it's kind of time consuming to set up? If you had to have a lot of these questions set up for your quiz or your test, it can be time consuming to do this. So that's one option. So multiple choice, where the options for the multiple choice are actually images. I want to show you another way of using images. If I scroll down a little bit, this one is a little bit different. Instead of the options being in the answer choices themselves, the question itself is an image. So again, if I click on this question, you can see the editing options here. I have added name this note, and I've put an image in as part of my question. And then I have got check boxes as the option here. So I made this a little bit of a tricky question. There are two possible answers to this because it is both a quaver and an eighth note. And I've marked both of these as correct answers, and we'll talk a little bit about that because that's part of the quiz setup options. But I have the options here, and then I've used that as the image here. So again, to do this one, if I go new question, just to show you this from scratch, so this will be name this note. This one, this is a little bit hidden. To be honest, I found this when I first started using forms for this purpose, a little bit hard to find. When you hover your mouse over the title of the question, a special image icon pops up, and this is the one that allows you to add the image as part of the question itself. So I'd click on that, and like before, go into my Google Drive, find the right folder, click through 7 million folders. Let me find, what am I doing? Notes. Let's go for semi-brief this time. Select that and insert. And the rest of the questions I'm going to show you are the same, so I won't spend too much time clicking through all my Google Drive folders for you, but that's how you would do it as part of there. And then I don't want a short answer question for the options. Oh, I could just leave it as a short answer, and the students are going to type in the word semi-brief or whole note. If I want to, I can change it to multiple choice and add some options or check boxes or even a drop-down menu. So all of those options are there for you. Okay, so let me just run through. I won't go through editing all of these, but again, this is just another example, this time a dynamic question. This one here, I wanted to show you this because again, from a mechanical point of view in Forms, I added this image in the same way. It's just an image which I made part of the question. But I wanted to just tell you that this image, the other images I made, and they were from Sibelius, and I made them one by one tediously with transparent backgrounds so that I could share them and everyone else could use them too. This image, however, I don't know if you could read this tiny text, but it's from another website where it allows you to generate single notes on a clef of your choosing in a range. So if you wanted to generate images for all of the notes from middle C to the next C up, like a whole octave worth of notes, you can click a few buttons on this website and it will do this for you automatically. And you click download, and all of those separate images download into a zip folder, and you put that in your Google Drive, and it's all good. So the website itself is on the Wait Click collection. I think Amy's just popping it in there. And so this one is called Brett Pimentel's Note Image Generator. It's brilliant. It's such a fantastic way to generate individual notes which are set up beautifully on a stave with a bar line, very clean, very nice. The one thing it doesn't do, before you all ask, there is no option to add intervals in the same way. It's just single notes on a stave of with a clef of your choice. But you can generate a whole stack of notes in one go, and it's just fantastic. It's super, super simple. So if you want this sort of thing, definitely do it. I have done this setup in Sibelius, and it's fiddly. I'm going to tell you, it's fiddly to do yourself and to take a screenshot. So if this is your need, go to this other website and just generate it there. You can put in I think key signatures, accidentals, and so on as well. All right, so next one down, this is the same images from the same website, but I've just done that example where the image is part of the choices for the student to choose from in the multiple choice. So you get the idea. This one here, again, you can have longer rhythms or melodies for students to work with in your questions. It doesn't have to be a single note or a single clef or a single dynamic. There's longer things. So when you're creating rhythms like this or melodies which are longer, you can do this in your notation software and take a screenshot. Or for this one, I used another website. So there is a website called Rhythm Randomizer. And you can go there and set up some parameters. You can choose the time signature. You can choose what type of notes are included, so what rhythmic values are included. You can say how many measures you want it to be, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, and you click a button. You actually click on the screen or tap on the screen and it generates a rhythm for you. And I thought, hey, this is a really quick way, rather than me putting all these notes into Sibelius and taking a screenshot, or you could do Noteflight or Flat. I'm going to just use Rhythm Randomizer. So I did it in there, took a screenshot, clicked the button to get a new rhythm, took a screenshot, clicked the button to get a new rhythm, took a screenshot. Very quick way to do it. So it's useful to have a few options at your disposal to make different things like this. I wouldn't use this for everything because for some of the rhythms that it produces, I don't like the spacing between notes. For some of them, I don't love, I don't know, there's limitations also on the parameters, on the rhythmic elements that you can choose from, rhythmic, what do you call it, values that you can choose from. There are limited time signature options. So if you want something more complex, you would do it in your notation software yourself manually, but this option is there. So Rhythm Randomizer for that one. Thanks, Amy. I can see you posting links there. Now, this one was created in Sibelius just as an example. I created a rhythm with no stave lines, took a screenshot, put it into the form. This one here, same thing. I created another rhythm, this time with no note heads, stick notation, took a screenshot, imported it into the form. So all of this is possible. And I just want to touch on that thing that I said earlier about, is this the best tool for the job? Creating these rhythms in notation software, taking screenshots, uploading them, finding them in your Google Drive and putting them into your form, it's all possible. It's just very time consuming. So I would suggest that you also consider other options if you need to do a lot of this. And I'm I mean, this is not just for older students, but particularly if you're working with older students or middle school and they need to drill through a lot of these exercises very frequently, you are probably better off finding a tool that will do this for you, such as musictheory.net or Aurelia or Musician for ear training and music theory. Those tools are designed for this purpose. They are there. You set up some parameters in that software, and there are endless numbers of exercises that your students can work through. You can set tests in there and quizzes yourself. So, yes, you can do it manually in forms, but just do consider, is it worth your time to do this? Now, I don't want to put people off from doing this at all, but I think it's just worth keeping that in mind. So, thinking about what is the best tool for the job. So, last example in this form, you can put longer things in here, of course. So, this notation image, again, I made in Sibelius. It's just the first part of a theme, one of these themes down here, and I popped it in there, and the students are going to identify it from the options. Now, one other thing I will mention, and I didn't set this up in this form, but with this option of adding a screenshot as an image, which is essentially the question that the students are answering, one thought I've had is that if you have worksheets that you want students to fill out digitally, I know many of you have been making them into a PDF, putting them into something like Google Slides, and adding text boxes over the top of the worksheet for students to fill them out in a digital way. One other option, and it would depend on the worksheet as to whether this will work or not, you could take a screenshot of the worksheet and add it as an image into a question or above a question, and then have the questions underneath that the students are going to answer. So, one example would be the worksheet has in it question one, what is the highest instrument in the woodwind section? And then in the same image, it will have question two, what is the lowest instrument in the string section? Underneath, you will pop questions in which say question one, and then a place for the students to write the question two, and a place for the students to write the question. But they are just referring back up to the image to work out what is the question. You don't need to necessarily write the whole question out for them. You're just creating a place for them to answer them. I hope that makes sense. I'm sorry I didn't have an example to actually show you, but I think that that could be a solution sometimes for that digital worksheet option. All right, my goodness, we have to crack on. I've just looked at the time. All right, let's go on. I'm going to get rid of this and this. Let's just talk about audio questions for a minute. Now, there is no good way to do audio questions in Google Forms. I'm going to tell you this now. There is no good way to do audio questions in Forms. There are possible ways. They're just, I don't think they're great ways to do it. So I did a little bit of experimenting. There is an extension called Talk and Comment. And what you can do is record something in it, paste a link, and this is the student view of this form. I'm going to show you what it looks like in the other view in a minute, but it ends up showing you a little play button. It looks cool, right? Now, don't get too excited about this. So, I'll press play for you can hear what it is. The question says, listen to this interval and identify it below. So that is me singing into the talk and comment extension, and you can hear birds in the background and all sorts of things. And I have added that as the question in my form, and then the students can answer it down below. Now, the biggest drawback of using this extension is that it only stores your audio for 90 days. So if you want to use the same form with a different class next semester, that will not be there anymore. It just won't exist. So you will have to do the audio questions again. Maybe that's not the end of the world, not a big deal. But I just need to mention that it's not the perfect solution. Underneath here, I did some experimenting with what if I want to create my answer, my question, sorry, in Loom. So Loom, I recorded myself in Loom singing an interval again, and this is what it looks like. It's got a really big long link. It's not the end of the world. So Loom is screencasting software similar to Screencastify. This is totally an option, but as the recipient of the form, when I click on this to hear the interval, it takes me to another whole web page. and it's asking me, yeah, it's saying, do you want to actually go to this website? So it's kind of like an extra thing, music quiz, and then the student would press play, and then they would have to go back to the form to actually put their answer in. Possible, not ideal. Same thing with this one, Vocaroo, I've used here. Vocaroo is an online recorder, voice recorder. Again, it works in the same way as the one above. And this other one down here is called Online Voice Recorder. You create a recording in that website, you download it, you upload it to Google Drive, and then you put a link in, and it still opens up a separate window. So none of these are fantastic, they're just possibilities. So, anyway, I just wanted to show you those options. Now, this last question down here, this one says play the starting note and then record yourself singing a major third. So, what the students would do with this is play the note, and then I won't do that for you, it's just me singing a note. And then they are going to click on add file, and they're going to add a file from their device, and it can be from their phone or something else that they're using, laptop, Chromebook, and so on, and actually upload their audio file to the form as their answer. And again, it's possible, it's just not the most ideal, easy way to do it. I would not do this maybe for short singing interval examples. I would do that, add a file function for something that's longer, like please submit your playing assessment for week 3, and they could add that file and it's them playing an entire piece. That would be a great use of forms. For this sort of thing where it's short questions, it just may not be the best thing. But you may find that there is a use for this function. So I did want to go through the options there. All right, I'm going to close those. Let me just show you what the editing view of the audio questions look like. So the talk and comment extension, do you remember this first one here was the one with a little play button? This is what it actually looks like when you're in that editing view, but when you go to the view that the students will see, then it shows the play button. So if you do this and think, hang on, that doesn't look right, go to the view with the students will see and it will show you there. All right, I'm going to move on to adding video. How are we all going? Having a little check. Okay. I think Amy's typing furiously. Okay, so adding video to forms, again, possible, just not like perfect and ideal. So once again, identifying information. Now, I've added a video here of Star Wars Imperial March, and then there are questions underneath it. Now, the only way to add video into your form to have the video showing, i.e., embedded in the form where the students can see the video and play the video without going to another place, is to use a video that lives on YouTube. So that can be someone else's video on YouTube, or it can be your own video that you have uploaded to YouTube, but it has to be a YouTube video. And as far as I know, and Amy can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you can use safe YouTube links or whatever else people are using, View Pure links, or any of those kind of services that take away ads and that sort of thing. It has to be a YouTube link in order for you to see the video in the form itself. So again, not the end of the world. Great if you have a YouTube video, just not ideal. My thought was, wouldn't it be cool with all of the Loom and Screencastify videos that teachers have been making for the last 6 months during remote learning? Wouldn't it be cool if you can now add them to your forms, have them showing in the form, and add a series of questions to them? Just not great, not ideal, because it's not going to look like that. So the way that will look is this example down here. This is me pasting a Loom video link into a question. And when I go to the preview version of this form, I'm going to show you what it looks like for the student. So here's the YouTube video. It looks beautiful and you press play and it's there. But the Loom video is a link and it will open up in a separate window. Now, the last thing I want to say about video is that you can ask students to submit video to you. So again, they will use the add file option when you're setting up a question. Let me show you what that looks like on this editing view here. So if you want students to add a file to the form and submit something that way, let me show you that because I didn't show that before. I'll just do a new question from scratch. So add new question. This one is add your file here. And what I'll do is in the drop down menu, select File Upload as the option. Now, this is saying, hey, do you want students to actually submit files to Drive for you for this? And you go, yep, continue. And then there are some options for you to choose from. So you can actually limit the types of files that they can submit to you. So if you know you want a video file from them or just an audio file from them, you can say that in the settings down here. So I'm going to turn that on, and then I'm going to check all of the types of files that I am going to allow the students to submit. So video and audio. Maybe that's it for this question. There are some times where you might do image or something else, but let's say that's it. Now, you can say how many files maximum do you want the student to be able to submit? So there are times where you only want to allow them to submit one. There might be times where you want them to submit more than one. Now, I want to mention this. This is really important to understand the maximum file size and this tiny writing down here, which says this form can accept up to 10 gigabytes of files. These settings are really important. So this one here, maximum file size, is you allowing certain file sizes to be submitted via this form. So if you set it to 1 megabyte and the student tries to submit a video, which is very, very, very likely to be more than 1 megabyte in size, they're not going to be able to do it. So you must make sure that whatever you have here suits what you're asking them to submit. If you only want PDFs and images, 10 megabytes might be enough. If you want videos, you might have to set it to 1 gig or 10 gigs, even if it's a long video. Same with the audio. Now, the reason for this being an important thing to understand, and this one down here, sorry, is that any files that are submitted through a form are going to end up in your own Google Drive. So if you have 400 students submitting videos to you via a Google form, you're going to end up with 400 videos in your Google Drive. That may not be an issue, but it may be an issue, and it's just something to be aware of. And this is where I get back to, if you want 400 students to submit a video to you, something else like Flipgrid may be a much, much better option. But it's here. So just be aware, and then all is good. Now, the overall setting, this last setting down here, this form can accept up to 10 gigabytes of files. Now, if I'm getting students to submit videos and I know that each student's going to submit a video, which is, I don't know, let's say it's going to be at 1 gigabyte in size, and I've got my form as a maximum set to only accept up to 10 gigabytes of files in total, the 11th student that tries to submit a 1 gigabyte video file is not going to be able to submit their form. So you need to make sure that that is set to what is appropriate for the question you're asking. So you'd hit change and you'd come in here and change the maximum files of all files uploaded to this form to whatever is going to suit you. So again, like I keep saying this, it's not the end of the world, but it's just some things to be aware of. All right, let's get on to just a couple of other things here. I just want to show you matching style questions. So you can actually set up questions in your Google Forms which have matching involved. So this question here says match notes from the G major scale to their correct scale degree numbers below. So the students are going to go, okay, G in a G major scale is scale degree number 1, and they can check that box. Oh, I'm in the non-student view. Hold on, let me go to student view. Okay, so all right, here we go. G is scale degree number 1, and then scale degree number 2 is A, so they can select that there. Scale degree number 3, and they can work through and put all the answers in there. So this is what a grid style question looks like, and this is one of the ways you can use it. You can use these in many different ways, but this is one option. This other example that I've got down here, match the instrument with its orchestral families. Now, this one up here is set so that you can only have one answer per column. So B cannot be the first scale degree number and also G, only one of them. So if I was to choose that there, oh no, it's allowed me. Actually, I think it's the other way around. Maybe I forgot to turn that on. You can set this up to only allow one response. So this one down here, I've only got 4 categories, and these things there's going to be more than one of these in each category. So for instance, clarinet, woodwind, If I go bassoon, also woodwind, and you can set it up so that students can check multiple things in a column. Let me go back to the editing view of this form. So this one is a multiple choice grid, and the one below is a checkbox grid. They work in roughly the same way. When you set this up, you put the answers in one column and the other things in one column, and then the form basically automatically sets the grid view up for you. With this one, I actually set it up with the answers correct. And then when the students view the form, it shuffles them all around so that they're not all in the right order already. I hope that makes sense. So that's the grid style questions. I want to get onto a couple of other things which are going to take a little bit of explaining. So I'm hoping everyone's happy to stick around for a little bit longer. Um, just briefly, I won't go into this one a lot, but one idea for using Google Forms is to use it as a practice journal. So here's a music practice journal, and this is just one way you can set this up. It depends what information you want in your students' practice journal, but they can fill out their first name, last name, class, and then they can fill out the time. So what time did their practice session start? What time did it finish? They can list which things that they worked on, the goals they had for the session, things that went well, things they need to improve, questions they have, and all those sorts of things. They can even add a recording at the end. So the reason this is kind of useful in the form view, not the form view, sorry, the spreadsheet view of this, you can do some clever things like add a column which will automatically calculate the duration of their practice time. So if they say they started at 10 a.m., they finished at 11 a.m., you can set the form up with the column that says, please add up the duration of the practice time, and it will show in a column so that you can keep track of the total time that the student is practicing if that's important to you. So that's just another idea for using forms. All right, checking in here to Donna's asked about shuffling the questions. I've just noticed that. Yes, I'm going to show you that. I'm going to talk about quizzes in a moment, and we'll talk about shuffling questions because it's super useful. Let me come back here and just go through a few other things before I show you a couple of other forms. Now, once you've learnt the basics, there are some clever things you can do with forms, which make things a little bit more interesting and a little bit more ninja. So, things in this category include self-grading quizzes, and this is where you can actually shuffle the order of questions as well. And escape rooms. I think there's a few people on who really wanted to know about escape rooms, so I'm going to get to that in a second. And things like providing personalised certificates automatically to people. Now, this is actually something we do at the end of every webinar. If you've done a webinar with me before, you'll know that you fill out a form in order to receive a PD certificate. And what happens is once you've filled out that form, you will get an email back with your certificate attached, and it has your first name, your last name, and whichever webinar you attended, and also the day that you did the webinar. So that's all done automatically. You might be surprised to know that I don't have someone typing all those things into the form manually, but it's done automatically and it happens like magic in the background. So I'm going to tell you what I use to do that because there are many other ways you can use this same function, and it's really, really useful. So I want to talk through each of these things, hopefully not take too long, but let's just talk self-grading quizzes for a second. And I'm going to jump back into forms in a second and show you what these look like. Self-grading quizzes, in forms itself, when you're setting up your form, you can turn on the option to make it into a quiz. Now, what this does, it allows you to tell Google Forms which of the answers out of a question are correct so that Google Forms can mark the question for you without you having to manually do this. So you turn on the quiz option, you identify the correct answers in your editing view of the form. You also assign point values to each of the questions. And then you can also include, if you want to, open questions, so short answer or long answer questions, but you do need to grade those manually. So if you have a form which is purely multiple choice or check boxes or short answer where you can define a very specific thing to be the answer, Those can be totally self-grading. If you have an open question where you need an opinion or something like that, you will need to actually manually grade that question. So you just need to think about what you want in the form and if you want it to be totally graded by Google Forms itself. Now, Google Classroom, if you are at a school that uses Google Classroom, there is also an option for you to click a button to import the grades in one go from Forms into your Google Classroom. This only works for Google Classroom users who are on a school domain. Now, I'm saying that because I personally have access to Google Classroom as a non school. I have my own one set up, but there are things that I can't do because I am not at a Google school with a school domain. And so for me, the grade importing option is not an option. So I mentioned this. So, one example for people who may run into this and go, oh, that's a shame, is let's say you were actually providing PD for a group of teachers and you decided to put the assignments and the information in Google Classroom and you thought, let's do a quiz and let's have it self grading and I'll import the grades. You can't do that if you're not actually using a school domain. So that's just for your information. The other thing that you really need to know, because I've seen a lot of questions about this online, is if you want to use the grade importing option, the form must be the only attachment on the assignment that you've set inside Google Classroom. If you've attached the form, like a quiz, and also something else for the students to refer to, some other materials, the grade importing option will not be there. You need to make sure it's the only attachment on the assignment. So, again, just for your information, what this looks like just vaguely, because I don't have Google Classroom, I had to grab screenshots from a YouTube video to show you this. So, up the top left here, when you've set it in as an assignment in Google Classroom, and it's the only thing, you will see this button here which says grade importing. You turn that on. When students have actually turned in their assignment, there's a little button here to say, yes, import the grades. Click on that and you're all good to go. All right, can we just go across and see an example just briefly? Let me show you that. Actually, I closed it. That wasn't very useful. Let me go back here. I'm just going to bring up that notation one that I showed you a little bit earlier because I have actually made that into a quiz style thing. And matching audio, image questions. Here we go. I was blind for a second. So this one, when I went into the form settings for this one, I went to quizzes and I turned on make this a quiz. Now there are some options in this. Do you want to release the grades as soon as the student is done? Allow them to see how successful they were. You can turn that off or have it on. Do you want to have it later after manual review? Again, you can turn it off or on as you wish. Respondents can see missed questions, correct answers, and point values. Again, choose whether you want those on or off for the quiz that you're creating. Now, when you're setting up your form, so let's say I've set this up as one of my questions. When I click on this to get back into the edit view of the form, there is a little extra thing down here. So once you turn on that quiz option, this appears, answer key. So what you'll do to tell Google Forms which is the correct answer and which is not the correct answer is click on that and you will select the one which is correct. So if this one was correct, I would change it to here or add it if there's even more than one. I'm going to uncheck that. So treble clef is the correct one. I also come up to the right-hand side here and I say how many points I'm awarding for this question. So that's it. So you can change this to 1 or 3 or 5. What you can have different weightings for different questions. The option is yours. Once you've done that information, you'll click done and you repeat that for every question. Now I wanted to show you one which is a little bit different here. This question here has short answer text as the option. So how am I going to tell Google what the answer actually is, what the correct answer is for this? It's not a multiple choice where I can say option A is the correct one. If I click on this and go into edit view, you can see that I have written the answer options here. So I've got forte and forte, and I've got it with a capital and with a lowercase. Now, it works for this question because the answer is forte or forte. And there's not like many variations that you could have on this. So you need to decide whether short answer text is going to work as an option for your question if you want to have it self grading. It's not always going to work if there are going to be too many variations that students could possibly type in and still get a correct answer, if that makes sense. So, answer key, when you click on that for this question, you will type in all of the possible correct answers, and then Google will assess whatever the students submit for that one. So again, hope that makes sense. But basically, that's it for quizzes. You set all of that up, and then once students submit them, it will grade for you. So that's a great option to have. Let me just go back here. Quizzes. Okay, let's just talk escape rooms. Who's been waiting for this one? Okay, so escape rooms are a fantastic activity, and Google Forms can help you set this escape room up, and they can be really great. This can be an excellent activity for remote learning or hybrid learning, or when you need something that's going to work in person or online, and all the other variations in between. So it's a great activity, and there's a lot that goes into an escape room. I've actually done a whole workshop on this separately. I'm not going to go lots and lots into the intricacies of options for setting up escape rooms, but I really want to talk the mechanics inside Google Forms. So, many ways to set up. I'm going to talk about two ways that you can use Google Forms for setting up an escape room. And again, these are not the only ways, but they should just hopefully give you some ideas, and then you can take it and do whatever you like after that, and use them in whichever way is going to work for you. So, the two main options, spelling error on my slide, sorry about that. Option one, use response validation to create digital locks. This is one option for setting up your escape room. And number two is to set up a choose your own adventure style form that uses sections in your form. Or option three is you can actually use a combination of both. So I'm hoping that most of you are familiar with what an escape room actually is. Basically, you set up a series of questions or puzzles for students to do. Once they've solved the puzzle, they end up with an answer, and the answer will unlock something. If you were physically in person with the students, you could literally have them enter a code, which is the answer they've just come up with, enter that into a physical lock and unlock a box which reveals the next clue to move on. You may have seen or even taken part in a real escape room activity at a place in your city. There's lots of them around that run these group activities, which are escape rooms. But you can do them in a digital sense. So you have a series of questions or clues or puzzles for students to work out, and then they're going to enter their answers into a Google form. And the Google form is going to say, yes, you've unlocked the box, or no, you have not unlocked the box, or the door, or whatever it is that's part of your storyline. So, option one for doing this in a form is to use what's called response validation. So, the example of this is that you will get students to solve something, they will end up coming up with a group of numbers or letters, which is the answer to the thing they've just solved. They will enter that answer into a box, into a short answer text box into Google Forms, and Google Forms will say, yes, you're correct. You're proceeding to the next stage, or no, incorrect. And how you do this is you tell Google Forms ahead of time what the text has to be that goes into that box in order for the person to proceed. Now, what I've done in the past is a really simple version of an escape room where I've taken a series of regular worksheets and made them into the clues. And then the answers to the whole page of worksheets forms a code. So I'm going to show you the examples here in a little bit bigger on the next slide, but basically they're going to solve a series of things, of questions. They'll end up with a code. You enter the code into the form, and the form is set up with response validation turned on. I'll show you this in forms as well in a second, but before we do that, this is what the worksheet would look like. So this is a regular style worksheet about dynamics, pretty dry and boring. But what students are going to do are answer all of the questions. So they're going to say, what is the answer to question one? The answer, music term that means play loudly, is forte. So the answer to this one is C. They're going to take the letter C and write that into the lock code box down the bottom. That is the first part of the lock code that they've worked out. They're going to answer question two and write the answer in the second box, question three, and so on. So they're going to end up with a series of letters, which are 5 letters in a sequence, and that is what they're going to enter into the Google form to see if they've got it correct. Same thing with this one. They're going to solve all of these. There's a little cipher that they have to use to work out what lock code 2 is, and that's what they're going to enter into the form. So let's just go across to forms and I'll show you how this works, what it looks like. So here's an escape room that I've set up in Forms. So I've got the first page here is my identifying information. So my team name is Team Blue. Who's in your team? I'm just going to make something up there. And what is my grade class? Just make something up. So clicking on next. Now, before I leave this, can you see that this information is on a page by itself? Just to isolate it, I have used sections in the form, again, which I'll show you in a moment, sections in the form which allow you to separate parts of your form out. So identifying information is on its own. I'm going to click next. And here is the place where the students need to enter their codes. So code 1 is a 5-letter code, and I've been instructed to enter it with all caps. So I click in this box here, and I need to write exactly the right combination of letters or numbers in order to answer this question correctly. So this is actually, let me go back to my slides for a minute. This is here, lock code 1 is whatever the answers are to these questions forms my lock code 1, and that's what I'm entering into this box. Now, uh, just as a little secret here, I've got them all written down so I could quickly show you what this looks like. So let me just enter the codes here. So the first one is CABDA. Oh, and I haven't got caps lock on. Let me just do that again. CABDA. Now, if I enter that correctly, I can go down to the next question and it shows me that this is all good. Let me enter the second one in. Now, the second one is the word cookies, and again, looks all good. Third one, I'm going to enter this one incorrectly. Now, the correct code is C, D, C, A, and the last letter is B. Let me enter something different. And if I go to the next question, it says, not quite. So it knows that that is the incorrect code. Because I have not entered that correctly, if I was to go ahead and enter all of these and try to proceed, because this one is not right, it will not let me go on. So let me enter the correct one here. Code 4 is this one here. You're probably wondering where all these codes coming from. So this is an escape room I set up for a workshop that I was running, and I'm just entering what I know are the answers here. And this one here, there we go. So if you do enter all of those correctly, then you can click the next button. And I see you did it. You escaped the room. You saved the cookies. I had a cookie theme for this particular one. So, yes, I did it. And I see a nice image saying, yes, you correctly did this. And then I can click submit. So, that's what it looks like for the students. If I go to the editing view of this form, I'm going to just show you what this looks like. We'll talk about sections in a minute, but here's the one where I've got the code. I want to enter a 5-letter code into this box. If I click on this to show you the editing view of this question, you can see that what I've done with the question is actually to come into these 3 little dots at the bottom right and turn on this thing called response validation. With that turned on, then I need to tell Google Forms what it is that I want in this box and what I need the students to answer. So I have said that I want the type of answer that they type into this box to be a text-based answer. If I click on the drop-down menu, you'll see I could make it a number instead if I wanted to. So text or number or a certain length. If I click on text, then I can say that I want this box to contain, which means it has to match exactly these letters here and I type them in exactly as I want the students to type them. So CABDA, and it's all caps. Now, because I need them to be all caps, they have to be either all caps or all lower caps or a combination. I would give students the instruction that they need to enter whatever it is that they're entering has to be entered with all caps. So I've done that in the description here. Now, what you can do over here is type in what do you want the students to see if they get it wrong. So they go, you can type in something like try again, hopefully spelled correctly. Again. So if they get it wrong, they're going to see the little try again message. If they get it correct, they'll be able to move on to the next question. So all of these are set up in that way with response validation turned on. There are lots of clever things you can do with response validation. If you choose a number, you can have it set to that they can only enter a number higher than a certain thing or lower than this, or it has to be between this and this. Lots of different options for you, but this is just how you can do the text ones. So that's a simple way of setting up an escape room with a series of questions and answers that students enter into a form using response validation to allow them to proceed or not proceed. Let me just go out of these. I'm going to close off a few things here. Just leave that. Let me go to my next one here. Don't need that one. I want to show you one more. So there's another way that you can set up escape rooms where basically you're not necessarily always using response validation. You can actually use different sections in a form, like a choose your own adventure. So students can fill out a section, and at the end of the section, there's a bit of a storyline going on in the form as well. At the end of the section, they have a question that they have to answer. And if it's multiple choice, you as the teacher can set it up so that if they get the answer correct, they will move on to the next stage of the escape room story. Or if they get it incorrect, they get sent to an image which says, no, that's not right, try again, and they'll go back and try a different answer. This is a great option, especially for younger students if you just want to have the simplicity of multiple choice and not to have them type in very specific text or numbers into a field, because that can be problematic, especially if you're working with very young students. It can also be good to use this method if you want the activity to be shorter. So if you don't want it to take a long time, you can make it shorter by making it a little bit more simplified. Now, what I what I did was I started to set up a really simple version of this, and then I got kind of like really involved, and so it ended up with this whole storyline, and then I just didn't get time to finish it, and this was late last night. So I'm going to show you what the start of this looks like, and then at some point I will actually finish this off. The reason for showing you this type of escape room also is to show you that you can actually include everything, all of the information, the storyline, and the activities in the Google form without the need for separate worksheets or separate websites or separate activities at all. So this one has a whole storyline. I won't read you out this. The gist of it is that is a band that's due on stage. All of their road cases are locked, and that's what contains the instruments they need to play. So the story of this escape room is that the poor roadie, needs to go find all of the keys to unlock the road cases. This is what you come up with at 10 o'clock at night. So click next to get started. So there's storyline that they're just going to read on the first page here. Click next. And then there's a little bit more storyline, bit of an image just to illustrate that it's a music festival. Click next. And then here's our first activity. So essentially, there's a box that's found. You need to unlock the box by entering a code. The code you have to work out from this. Now, this is this is a little musical activity that I worked out. There is an online xylophone called Xylo by PlaySprout, and I thought it's numbered. If you're using it on the web, it's numbered. The notes are numbered, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool? You could write out the series of numbers that form a melody and get the kids to work out what the last part of the melody is and essentially what the numbers are for the last part of the melody. So for those of you who are singing along in scale degrees, it's just Mary Had a Little Lamb. So 3 2 1 2 3 3 3 2 2 2 3 3 3 3 2 1 2 3 3 3 3. They need to work out that the last part is 22321, and that is the code that they're going to enter or the answer they're going to choose down here. You can send them off to the website where they actually play this through and work out, oh, that's Mary Had Little Lamb, and see if they can fill in those gaps there. Anyway, I've made this multiple choice. So this is just to show you that if I select the incorrect answer here and click next, it's going to show me you punch the numbers into the keypad, but nothing happens. The box remains locked. Okay, so I've got to go back and try again. So I'm going to click next, go back here, and hopefully I'll work out that this one is the correct answer. Click next. And instead, this one goes, hey, that's correct. You have the key. So this is kind of a cool way to actually set up your whole escape room within Google Forms. I hope you're all with me here. I know this has taken longer than I had hoped to get through, but stick around if you want. And of course, you can catch up with the recording afterwards if you need to. But let me just briefly show you the mechanics of this form. So essentially, I have a section here. I have a second section here with an image. I have a third section here and a question, and I have other sections down here. So to set this up, what you'll do, let me go right down to the bottom and I'll set up the next part. So what I would do here is I've got a new question down here. Let me actually get rid of that. So let's say this code was right. I need to set up the next section. So once the students have answered this question and they've seen a key, they're going to click a next button. And I want them to go to a new page altogether where the next part of the story is. So to do this, I'm going to click on Add Section. So we haven't done this one before. Add Section. And I've now got an untitled section here. Now, a section can just be the start of a new page. It doesn't have to have a lot of writing on it. It can just be like the next part. Or it can do things like say, yes, the code was right. Or let's have a look up here. You punch the numbers into the keypad, but nothing happens. So this is a section here, and it happens to have an image in it. So the new section down here might be, we're going on to the next part of the story. So you head out of the room. Oops. Out of the room. And then you can fill in the rest of the story down here. Now, you could put more of the story in the description section. And then if there's a clue that the students are going to answer here, you'll add a question inside this section, just the way we've been adding the other questions. So this question might be, I don't know, it could be one of those identify which one is the treble clef type questions. And that could be the thing that successfully gets them on to the next part of that escape room. So adding sections is a really useful thing. Although when I'm in editing view here, I can see all of my sections one after the other. Once you're in the view of the form where you're working through as a student, you will only see one of those sections at a time. So let me just talk about the mechanics of setting this question up. Like, how does Google Forms know which is the correct answer and how to send my students on to the right section or the wrong section? So with this question, I'm going to click on this to go into edit view. Once you've set up your sections in your form, you can kind of like set up this choose your own adventure style pathway through your form. So this question has the question up the top. It has an image, which is the question itself. We've done that before. I've made it multiple choice. And if you look down here, it says that if they choose this answer here, I'm telling the form to go next to section 4. Section 4 is where it says, sorry, you're wrong. You haven't opened the lock. This question is the correct one. And instead, it's sending people to section 5, where, yes, you're correct. The box springs open and you've got the key. This one is incorrect. It goes to the same place as this one. This one is incorrect and it goes to the same place as this one. So to do those, they're very easy to set up. You'll essentially add a question, type your question in. You've got option 1, option 2, option 3 for your multiple choice. And what you need to do to set this up is to go into the 3 little dots at the bottom right. and choose Go to Section Based on Answer. If you just have this off, once they've done this question, they'll move on to the next section as usual. But I don't want them to. I want to go to section based on answer. So I choose that. And then this is where I can say if option 1 is correct, which section do I want to send them to? So I found the useful thing is to actually map this whole thing out. If you're going to make this long and involved, map it out on paper first, set up all of your sections, and then when you set your questions up, you can easily choose where you want people to go. So let's say this one's correct, and I go, yes, the code is right. So I'm going to choose that. In this one is the incorrect question. I'm going to say, no, whatever, this one is not the correct one, and so on. I work through like that. So I hope that makes sense. I know that I've gone through this quickly. I'm conscious of the time, but this is a great option if you want to set up this whole kind of choose your own adventure style escape room. And it's something where students can work through completely on their own if you would like them to, or with a group on their own. It can be an independent thing. It could be something that you have as a substitute activity. It doesn't have to be, but it can be something that you have as a substitute activity. It can go alongside lots of other things that you're doing, and you can make the questions anything you like. Believe me, you can tie anything into any theme. If you try hard enough, you can just make the theme work. Mary Had a Little Lamb is nothing to do with roadies and a music festival, but hey, it doesn't matter. That is what the person had to enter into the code to unlock the box. So so anyway, I hope that's given you some ideas for setting up escape rooms. As I mentioned, it's a whole thing, it's a whole workshop of its own, but that's the mechanics inside forms. And there are lots of YouTube videos which walk you through this process in detail. So that's a great thing to do if you need more information about that. Okay, let me just go back to my slides here, and I'm not going to show the last thing in detail anyway. Oh, let me just walk through this. So we've looked at the example. So when you get a copy of the slides, this will remind you how this works. So sections break your forms up into like pages. And this is what you'll do. You'll say incorrect questions, you'll set them up to go to like a dead end or into a correct answer and then proceed through the form. So that's what it looks like. The one that I showed you, the 3 incorrect answers all go to the same place. They go into the, oh no, that's not correct, next section, or the correct one looks like this and goes to, yes, you've unlocked the key. Now, the only issue that I have with this style of escape room question is that, students can just try each one in order and find the correct one. They don't actually have to do the thinking that's behind the question. And for that reason, I really think it's a good idea to include a combination, at least, of multiple choice answers and those response validation style ones, which are much harder. So I would do a combination. Of course, if you're working with younger students, the multiple choice option on its own, like this, would be totally fine. All right. Personalized certificates. I'm just going to mention this in passing because there is a YouTube video that I have made which walks you through this entire process. Now, this is where you can merge data that someone has filled out in a form automatically into a document or a slide, Google Docs or Google Slides. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is how we offer personalized PD certificates for webinars. It will merge data from the form into, or from the sheets, I should say, into the document. I'm going to just show you what this looks like briefly inside my slides here, but this is using Autocrat, which is an add-on for Google Sheets. Don't go looking for it for forms, it's for Google Sheets. So if you open up a sheet, you can go into the add-ons menu and find this in their marketplace. I've included a link to it in the collection of links for this webinar. All right, so this is what our forms look like when you have not when we have not merged the data. So on the left, we have a template set up, and this is literally what it looks like. It has those little placeholder things which say first name, last name, and there's a placeholder down the bottom which says date. Now, you will see a form like the one on the right. You will fill out that information, and when you click submit, this Autocrat add-on merges your first name and your last name into the template and adds the date in as well into the spots that we've set up. So when you fill out the form on the left there, the spreadsheet ends up looking like that on the right. I've blurred out the information there, but you can see we have a whole stack of people who filled out the form, and this is why we are not doing it manually. A lot of people needing forms all the time, and that once they've clicked that submit button, it goes into our spreadsheet, and automatically, auto magically even, it ends up looking like this. Michelle actually works for me, so I've used hers as an example here. So, first name, last name, and date all appear inside the document, personalized just for you. So, it's a great way to do this quickly and without too much pain. And out of many years of using this add on, and when I say many years, I really do mean many years, and literally thousands of people filling out our forms to get PD certificates, thousands and thousands. We have had a small handful that have gone wrong, really a very small handful. The biggest thing that goes wrong is that people don't realize that the PDF that they get sent has ended up in their spam folder in email. So usually that's the only issue. Like, I didn't get my form, and then you just say to them, "Can you check your spam folder?" And usually it's there. So do if you want to see the step-by-step process on how to set that up, there's a YouTube video again, which I've included in the links for this session, and you can go and watch that. Oh, good. Adobe Flash Player wants to update. I don't think so. All right. I'm at the end. I'm going to just run through these last few tips very quickly. This is a few general things that I knew I would forget to mention. Just going to say, once you're setting up your form, you can drag your questions up and down to change the order. If you realize that you don't want question 3 in that position, you can drag it up in your form. You literally grab hold and pull it up, and it moves. You can start your form with a template if you want to. There are templates for forms. I don't usually, but sometimes it's good to see a starting point. I did mention that when you are in the spreadsheet view of all your responses, you can add extra columns for your own benefit in order to sort data or add information. And navigating from the form to the spreadsheet and vice versa, if you open up the spreadsheet, there is a forms menu which allows you to click on that and go, I want to see the form that's attached to this spreadsheet. You can click through to the form that way. When you're in the form view, you can look at responses and click on the spreadsheets button to get to the spreadsheet. So I find both of those useful from a navigation point of view. This thing, I knew I would forget this. So there is a place where you can set your form preferences. And I do want to mention that if you want to have the default setting as every single question is always required, turn it on. I find this really useful. I don't always want every question to be required, like force people to answer it, but I do always want the majority to be required. So I'd rather have it on and then I just uncheck it if necessary. So that's how I have it usually. I turned it off for today's session. The default point, quiz point value, again, if you know that most of your quizzes are going to involve questions which are 1 point each, just make that your default value. Otherwise, it's just 0 and you have to add 1 point in every single time. Make it 1 and then you can change it for the things that are not 1 point value. Make it 5 or 0 or whatever. So, a couple of tips there. The preferences, where you will find this on the forms page, there's 3 dots at the top right, and that's where you'll find this option. Oh gosh, let's talk about this quickly. Are you all still here? My goodness. Look at you hanging on. Ah, gosh. How to prevent cheating. I'm going to talk about this as quickly as I can so that we can get on to Q&A time. I really am near the end. So, there's been quite a bit of discussion about students cheating. Bless them, middle schoolers. You cannot prevent cheating 100%. So if you got your hopes up thinking I had this magic answer, you actually can't. Sorry about that. You can't prevent it 100%. But you can do a few things to make things harder for the students. So one option I have personally is to rethink your approach. Do not make a quiz which has only multiple choice questions and answers. Don't make it so that it's so easy for the students to actually find the answers. I'm going to give you some tips on what you can do. But I will say that one thing that students have worked out how to do is that if you give them a form which has all multiple choice questions where it's easy to work out, like it's easy to identify that 1 out of 4 is going to be the correct answer, you can go into the developer tools, and some of you may have never seen this before, but you can basically go into the back end, the coding view of the form, And if you look hard enough, and believe me, you have to sift through a lot of text and information, there is a place in the developer information, i.e., the code, which identifies which of your four multiple choice questions is the correct one that you have told Google Forms is the correct one. So if the students know this, and I'm going to tell you, there's about when I was Googling about Google Forms, I found instantly about, I didn't even Google how to cheat on Google Forms. I just looked up Google Forms in YouTube and I instantly came across at least 5 videos which said how to cheat on your Google Forms quiz. And this is what they're recommending. So don't make all the questions like that. There's other things you can do also, but include some non Googleable questions and questions that are not just multi choice. So, other things you can do. You can turn on the shuffle answers and or questions options. I haven't shown you that. I'll go back into that for those that want to stick around and see it. Um, in addition, so shuffling answers and questions means that if you have students which are near each other or even working remotely, it makes it harder for them to say, yeah, the answer to question 3 was this. So if you shuffle the questions, all of the questions in your quiz, question 3 for student A is going to be different to question 3 for student B. Also, you can shuffle the answers within a question. So if it is a multiple choice and it's got A, B, C, D, you can actually shuffle the order of those answers around. So that is going to help a lot. It still doesn't get around that looking at the code view, but it will help. You can also turn off the option to allow students to see their grades and all the answers immediately. Don't have that turned on if you don't want that turned on. You can also turn off the option to send a copy of the answers that the students have submitted to themselves. There is an option to turn that on or off. Just have that off if you want to lock it down a little bit further. Now, one way to get around that code view, students viewing the code and seeing all the answers, is actually to set up your quiz and then turn on the quiz functionality after the students have submitted their answers. This is the biggest workaround. So you wait till all of the classes submitted their quiz, then you as the teacher go in and turn the quiz functionality on, you identify the questions for Google Forms and you put the point values in. If you want to do that, give it a go. Maybe that will work for you. Um, if you are at a Google school, you have Google Classroom, and you have Chromebooks and they are managed by the school, all of those boxes need to be ticked, then you can turn in what's called Chromebook lockdown mode. So if your kids are on devices, Chromebooks that are not managed by the school, this is not an option for you. If your kids are on iPads and Chromebooks combination, it's not an option for you. But if you are in that situation, Chromebooks managed by the school, you can turn on Chromebook lockdown mode. And that's an option when you set the assignment in Google Classroom. And then the last thing I'll suggest is that you can set a window of time. Now, this is obviously not going to like solve everything, but if you only make the quiz available until 4 p.m. on Tuesday, it's just going to help a little bit. So students won't even be able to do anything after that point. You can turn off accepting responses. You can turn off the function that allows people to submit responses to your form. Go in and turn that off when you think the students should be all done with the quiz. There's You can do that manually, or there is another add-on called Form Limiter, which allows you to set up a window of time for students to answer the quizzes. Okay, phew. I think we got through everything. That's a lot of information. I'm really sorry if I've overwhelmed. I really did want to include everything though. So what's next? What's next is that we all have a cup of tea and a lie down. What's next is that we try a simple form first. If you've never done this before, try a simple form. Don't make it a really complex one with sections and questions, all the things. After that, I would suggest try adding in images, adding in audio or video if you want to into your forms. And then after that, try an escape room if you want to do that sort of thing, or something, choose your own adventure type activity where students are maneuvering. That can be lots of fun to set up if you like that sort of thing, which I do, and which is why I was doing it at 10 o'clock last night. But do that. Okay, if you are a member of my Midnight Music community, I have an online membership where you can get access to lots of other courses and a community forum and so on. I've actually created a set of Google Form header images. So if you are tired of the ones that you see inside Google as their default choices, I've got a collection of those which I'm going to put into the community forum for everyone to access and you can download yourself. And also, I'm going to give members access to copies of the forms that I've shown today, simply for the fact that you can kind of pick them apart and work out how they were built. Not really to use them because I just dumped stuff in there, examples of different types of questions. But I will provide those copies in case you want to pick them apart and just work out how things were done. And if you're not a member of the community, love to have you join. I'm in there every day answering questions of people, and people are taking courses and learning things. Amy, who's moderating today, is also helping me out inside the community, and she's fantastic. She gets to lots of questions before I do and probably answers them better a lot of the time. So, well, between us, we're getting through everything there. If you would like a PD certificate for today's session, and I'm going to hopefully, well, I might get Michelle to change it because I think that the total time reflected on the PD certificate is 2 hours. We may adjust that to a bit longer, given we're going to do question and answer time next. But if you want to get one, midnightmusic.com.au/PD forms. And that will do that process that I just described before, where you'll fill out a form and you'll get automatically sent a personalised certificate. All right. If you had signed up to this and you got notifications about the webinar and got the link sent to you in email, you'll get a replay link sent within 24 hours. There will also be a copy of my slides, a link to the PD certificate form if you haven't done that already, and other useful links I will include on that page too. And I just want to mention the date for next month's webinar. Now, I'm still kind of tossing up with the topic. I was thinking I may do an advanced Google Slides webinar. I'm sort of conscious about doing too many Google things in a row. So I may put a form out there which allows you to vote on next month's topic, which I did do for this one, and Forms was the resounding winner. But anyway, the November date is there. For those of you who are in Australia like me, again, the time will change. It's going to be 12 p.m. midday if you want to join from there, but it remains 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for those of you in the States. And that is because the US is changing their time zone. We've just changed ours. Now the US is changing. All right. Oh, and I'm going to just mention also for the December webinar, I'm going to do something a little bit different. So November will be like this one, hopefully not quite as long. December webinar is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be an end of year party, and it's just going to be an open Ask Me Anything session. I'll be on the screen answering questions, and I will have guest people on. We're going to have giveaways and so on. So if you would like to join me for that, I would love to have you. I'm going to go back to my screen right now. Me on the screen, I should say. Hello, everyone. And yeah, I'd love to have you join me for that. So November will be a regular one. December will be the end of year party. All right, I'm going to just open up the chat window. I always feel like I don't know what's happened for the last little while when I'm presenting, but there you go. I hope you did find that useful. Oh man, I knew it was going to be a long one today, but yeah, I am a bit sorry it's gone almost 2 hours already. So thank you so much. Thanks to Amy, who's probably been typing furiously in all the places. And oh, that's fine. PD certificate, that's fine. No problem at all, Amy. All good. And yeah. So only 6 months early. That's all right. It's close enough to 2 hours, honestly. Well, it's going to be 2 hours on there, so it's all good. Thank you to everyone who's been here the whole time. And yeah, there's a lot to cover. I know that some of you will be overwhelmed by what I've covered today because I really covered everything that I wanted to cover. It's not everything, but I really did want to get through all of those things, particularly for those who have been using forms for a while and you may have wanted to see those more advanced techniques or options. A lot of the time it's about seeing the possibilities and then you can work out the mechanics. So if you're new to forms and you're thinking, oh my gosh, like way too much information, do not attempt all the things. Attempt one single really simple form and don't go any further. Make the form work. Do it as an exit ticket or a check-in with your students. Like, it's a great thing at the beginning of a lesson, like, how are you feeling today? And just have an open box for them to type into. That can be it. Or put a song on and ask them how does the song make you feel? Or anything you like. That single question, get them to write their name in, single question, that's it, submit. Just test it out and see how that goes, and then you can see where you can find the responses and then go on to more complex things after that. Thank you, everyone. I'm just checking the chat window now. uh, Escape. I feel like I'm hoping that people found the escape room part useful. Look, to be honest, that literally is or should be. I actually have run a webinar on escape rooms before. It is. It deserves much more time than just a section in a larger webinar. It's really a whole thing on its own. Okay, I'm going to just see if there's questions. Thank you for the thank yous as usual. Jess says, I have a question about YouTube and embedding, whether this works more like ClickView. We can answer. Traveling to a later point. Yeah. So, Jess, I'm not quite sure if I've got your question exactly, but what I meant to say with the video thing is, you know, that whole thing about maybe Google Forms is not the best tool for students answering video questions or questions based on a video. Edpuzzle is a fantastic platform which allows you to have a video and place questions throughout the video. They pop up during the video and it says, at this point, which instrument do you hear if it's a music video? So they can write their answer in and then it continues on through the video and then you can ask another question. Having it in a Google form, you can still say at bar 3, which instrument did you hear playing, or who played the solo during the chorus. All of those are possible, but Edpuzzle is a tool which is exactly designed for video questions. So that might be a better option. So Jess, your question about how it works, whether it works more like ClickView, where you can answer questions that pop up during the video, or whether it's just a link. So yeah, with forms, if you do it in forms, they will play the video and it just plays the video. There's no questions that pop up at all during the video itself. It just plays. And then underneath, they will see the questions, maybe 1 or 2 or 5 questions for that video. Cassie says, thank you. I'm tired of having to jump through 50 hoops to get a simple item completed. I'm not sure what that was specifically in reference to. The images, I don't know. But yes, it can be tiring. Great. Thanks, Connie, who appreciated a review and a reminder of the how-to. Oh, great. Julie says, I've helped fix so many of the problems you were dealing with. Great. I'm glad. That was actually what I was hoping with this because I mean, look, there are hundreds of videos on YouTube about how to create forms. Sometimes as music teachers, though, you just need the lowdown on, can I add audio to a form? Is it worth my while? And does it work? And maybe the answer is just no, or there isn't a great way to add audio, which is what I think. It's still possible. It's just not great. Thank you, Melissa. Great. I'm glad you found this useful too. And Donna and Catherine. I'm going to sift through and hope I see questions. Sean, maybe a better option for quizzes using multimedia. Yeah, it really depends as to what you want to ask. So you've asked about sound clips as quiz items. It's a hard one, I find. To be honest, most of the platforms that allow you to set up quizzes and things, their go-to option for adding multimedia like that is as actually video. It's not the end of the world. It just means that you might need to think, like just consider in your mind that you're not just creating an audio file. Actually, record yourself using Screencastify, playing the example. You can have a static image showing on the screen if you don't want to show yourself singing the interval that you want the students to identify, like I was. You can actually just have a picture showing which says, identify this interval, and then you play it or sing it, and that becomes your audio example. So yeah, that's one of the options for using like video instead. So things like Kahoot or quizzes and so on. To be honest, someone can tell me because I'm having like a brain dead moment. I can't even think whether Kahoot or quizzes or those platforms allow you to add just an audio file. someone will know for sure. I know, and will type in, but that those might be better options. Platforms that are set up for quizzing specifically. Anyway, thanks. Amy is so patient and helpful, says Di. She totally is. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Future webinars, Cassie says, on Chrome Music Lab or Songmaker or Incredibox. Not specifically, only because I have already inside the community, the paid community, I have quite a number of things on Incredibox. I have multiple lesson plans on Incredibox in there. And Chrome Music Live Songmaker, I have a few things also in there. I have a Star Wars thing that's on my blog, just in terms of an actual lesson plan that you can use. I am planning on doing a lot more with Songmaker. So that is coming. That's like my next one of my next projects. I won't say my next project because I always have about 20 next projects, but that is one of them. But yeah, I want to do more specific, like how to use them, how to set up your own lesson plans and ideas for making it effective. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you. Yes, Jen loves Edpuzzle. I love Edpuzzle. Thank you, and Andrea. Maybe that was supposed to be. Yeah, Flipgrid, exactly. I agree, Catherine. Flipgrid for video is a great platform. I will just say with Flipgrid, and the difference between using Flipgrid for accepting students for video and Google Forms for accepting students is Google Forms, as I mentioned, when you are taking videos, when they are uploading them as an answer, it's taking up space in your Google Drive. Not with Flipgrid. With Flipgrid, the videos live on the Flipgrid servers. They take care of all that space. So that is why one of the reasons why it's a great, effective option. Oh, Connie asked about adding Bitmoji to a form. Yeah, you can totally add Bitmoji. I actually meant to show you an example of emojis as options for multiple choice. So, how do you feel about this song? Option A, smiley face. Option B, sad face. Option D, angry face. You can do that even. So, once you're typing your answer options, you can put the emojis in. So, your own Bitmoji, though, you can just add as an image into the form. Absolutely. So, yeah, you just add it as an image like you would normally do. Michelle, thank you. Who says fabulous presentation? Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yeah, and Amy. Eva's done a second webinar today. My goodness, Eva. I don't know where you are in the world. Either you need a glass of wine or a big cup of coffee. Yep. Okay, Jess, great. Yep. Just reading your comment about Edpuzzle and ClickView are similar. Yeah. Yep. You're probably better off in Edpuzzle for that. When adding headers to forms, can you use regular pictures? Yes, absolutely. So the person that asked about headers, when you add a header to the form, the shape of the header is prescriptive. It's a long, thin rectangle. If you add an image which is actually a regular dimensions, like let's say it's a square image, Google Forms will crop it. You will be able to choose which part of the image you want to actually show, but it will only show a portion of your image if it is not already a rectangle. And yeah, you can upload an image from anywhere. So you can find something somewhere else and then upload that. Yeah, Amy's confirmed also. I actually put the dimensions in the Wakelet collection, which has the links for this session. I put the dimensions in there somewhere. It's 1600 by 400 pixels, if you really want to know. Yeah, Amy's not sure about audio either. I didn't know either. Anyway. Oh, Star Wars lesson, Kathy. Yes. Oh, good. I'm glad that was useful. I have plans to do lots more. Thank you, guest from Portugal. Had no courage to leave. Oh, you're lovely. I'm glad you stuck around. Great. Thank you, guest from New Zealand who said thank you. Oh, cool. Jen's getting the grade 5 kids to do remixes of Hot Cross Buns in Chrome Music Lab. That's a great idea. Courtney says to join inside the community, does my school need to pay? Hang on. Oh, in order for my school to pay, they need a USA and business certificate. If you email support at midnightmusic.com.au, Courtney, if you're still on, so support at midnightmusic.com.au, there's a number of forms that we have which we fill out in order to deal successfully with school districts that require specific things. Not everybody does, but some people do. Michelle, who is my customer support person, will know exactly the right answer for that question. Carolyn's, it says useful, but I'm exhausted. I am too, totally. uh, thank you. See you next month. Lieben. Hopefully I said that correctly. Um, Guest says, I logged in as a guest. How do I change to a membership login? If you're talking about login, uh, joining the community, that's a separate thing altogether. Logging in here is a different thing. This is just for this webinar. So Amy's popped the link just above your comment if that's what you're after. Oh yeah, Sue says where in the spreadsheet can you link back to the form? Yeah, let me show you that. I'll actually go back and share my screen and show you that. Cool. Okay. All right. Let me just go back and share my screen. Let me find a thing where I've got actual answers. And I can show you the response thing here. It's like a portal, I think, going from one to the other to the other. Let me find one where I've got some answers in here. This one, I think. Okay. I'll just share my screen. Hopefully you're still on, the person who asked this question. I've forgotten already. So when you're in the form, I'm in the editing view of the form and you go to responses tab, and this is to open the spreadsheet initially. So at any time you open your form, you can get to the spreadsheet by going to this button here and opening the spreadsheet. This spreadsheet will also live in your Google Drive, of course. So you can just search for, this one's called GF for Google Forms, GF exit ticket. If I search for that in Google Drive, I'll find the spreadsheet. But if you are looking at the spreadsheet and you're like, oh, I really want to get back to the form, let's pretend I don't have it open on another tab. I can go into form, this menu item here, and I can go to live form. That's the filling in view, the student view, or I can go to edit form if I want to edit the form itself and, as a teacher. If you go to that live form view, that will take you straight to the view that you can share with other people. I hope that makes sense. But yes, it's very useful to do that too. Okay, where am I? Back to the chat window here. Great. Jen, off topic. Bluetooth headphone mic combo. Possibly, we could talk more in the community if you want. I actually just bought, and I didn't let myself open it until this webinar was open. So it's still in its box. Let me grab it. Hold on. And I don't know if this is what the sort of thing that will suit you. This is called the Rode Wireless Go, and the two little it's small, it's really small. I know, and we could have an unboxing session right now. I literally haven't look, I haven't it's arrived like 3 days ago and I haven't opened it yet. Let me open it and show you how small it is. It's very small and, basically there's a little, transmitter and a receiver, and you can hook it up to your laptop or your phone or whatever via Bluetooth, as long as you can do Bluetooth. I probably won't be able to open this, You know how unboxing is really hard when maybe one of my boys. Oh yeah, it's got stickers. Anyway, it's not going to happen. I'll fiddle with it while we're talking. But yeah, the two little things here. So you can use this in two ways. The thing which is the actual microphone part is one of those. It'll be, I don't know which one. One of those has their microphone. So you can clip that little square thing onto your clothing and the receiver joins into your device, whatever your device is. Either your camera, videotape it. Yeah, okay, that's good. Either you can put this on a DSLR camera or your phone or your laptop, and yeah, the other end is on you or close to the thing you want to pick up sound from. You can hook up the microphone part. Doesn't have to be on a person. It can live on like a tripod and be near and pick up the ambient sound. Do you know what I mean? Additionally, if you don't want to have the square thing attached to you, you can get, this is what I got to go with it, and this is not compulsory, it's just an additional option. is a little lapel mic. So I'm going to join that into the little square thing, and then the lapel mic will sit on my clothing. Very cool. I will share a video. There's a fantastic Aussie guy called Justin Brown who runs Primal Video, and he has fantastic videos about video. And he has a great video about that, talking through. Oh, Phil got one yesterday. Did you really? The same thing, Phil. You haven't? Have you tried it? I bet you've tried it straight away. Now, I've got it here for 4 days on my desk, or 3 days or something. Still haven't opened it yet. I just didn't want to let myself get caught up playing when I knew I had to fiddle with things. Um, yeah. Anyway, so there you go. Yeah, you tried it. Okay, cool. Is it good? It comes very highly recommended by lots of people. Rode do great things with microphones and stuff. So yeah, that's cool. I'm excited to try it. It's very apparently very good quality, and works really well. What Yeah, one of the things I wanted it for, so if I wanna do a short intro to a YouTube video where it's me on the camera, oh god, it shouldn't be so hard, but it's really hard to get decent sound, and you don't want the sound of that to be so different to when you switch over to you're sharing your screen, and I'm using this microphone and so on. So I wanted to get decent sound so I can just set it up and go, done, and then it's easy to just sort of get it all happening. Um, yeah, but yes, you could totally use it for teaching purposes. It would work really I think it would work really well, maybe in this situation for Zoom calls and stuff like that. Um, I'm not on Zoom right now, but you know what I mean, like this sort of live streaming situation. I have a little tendency to avoid Bluetooth anything when I'm presenting to large groups where it's really crucial that everything goes right. But having said that, this might work perfectly well, so yeah. Yeah, okay, cool. Just getting back to other questions, on topic questions. Thanks, Jen, for the off topic thing. Uh, yeah, Juanda, hopefully I've said your name correctly. You you could put a link to your Edpuzzle into a Google form. You wouldn't I don't believe you can't really embed the Edpuzzle, like it won't show there, if you know what I mean. So yeah, you would put a link to it in a form. So and you'd only do that really if you had other things in the form that you want kids to answer. Answer this, answer this, answer this. Now go and do this set of questions in Edpuzzle. It's going to take them separately to the Edpuzzle platform in order to answer, I think. Pretty sure. Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Jen, who's sorry, not sorry. And thanks, Danny. Great. Excellent. Okay. All good. All right. I'm going to wind up. I think it's probably best that we do wind up. Otherwise, we could be here chatting all day. But thank you, really. Thank you so much if you're still online and hanging around. And yeah, the slides will be available, as I mentioned. The slides are not going to show all of those Google Forms because I went in and out of Google Forms on my Chrome browser and then back to slides. So the slides are only going to show the slides. But still, I think there's probably enough in there. So thank you for all that. And I will look forward to seeing you November for the topic yet to be announced, possibly Google Slides Advanced, but possibly something else. Look, I am open to suggestions. And for the person that suggested Chrome Music Lab Songmaker, maybe I will make a form and add that as one of the options. I have a feeling that will be very popular. Yep, it is totally time for tea and a nap. That's for me. It's almost lunch. Oh, it is lunchtime here, 1:15. And really, I'd love to see you in December as well, where it'll just be me like this chatting and having people to join me chatting on the show, on the webinar. And they'll do some giveaways. I'm not sure quite yet what I'm going to do in that session, but I'm going to try and make it lots of fun. We might have some competitions during the session. I'm going to get some of my favorite music tech ed people on to have a chat and say hi. Amy's going to come and say hi. And yeah, I will look forward to seeing you then. So thanks, everyone. The chat window will be a little bit, will be open for a little bit longer. I will keep an eye on it, but I will shut it off at some point so that I don't feel like I need to answer questions all afternoon there. But do answer questions ask questions a little bit longer if you want to in there. And yeah, I'll look forward to seeing you at the next one.